Why does a good God allow so much pain? This is the question that makes many Christians sit in silence, and probably one of the hardest questions our faith is ever going to face. This is one thing that makes faith feel impossible. Not science, not doubt, not skepticism, but suffering. Deep, raw, relentless suffering. At some point in your life, if you haven't already, you're going to look around and ask, "Where are you, God?" You'll see the chaos, the headlines full of violence, the children dying in wars they never chose, disease eating away at people who did nothing to deserve it, families losing everything in the blink of an eye. And you'll wonder how a God who's supposed to be all-loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful could possibly sit by and let it happen. And maybe the question won't be about the world. Maybe it'll be personal. Maybe it'll be the death of someone you love, a betrayal you never saw coming, or a pain that you've carried for years and no one knows about. You'll ask not just why bad things happen, but why they happen to you. And that's when the storm really begins. Because if God could stop it and doesn't, what kind of God is that? Is he cruel? Is he cold? Is he absent? Is he even real? That's the heart of what theologians call the problem of evil. It's not a question you can just shrug off. It's not something you can solve with a cute quote or a clever slogan. It hits you right where it hurts, in the soul. And let's be honest, most of us don't talk about it. We avoid it. We sweep it under the rug in church, in prayer, in conversation, or worse, we dress it up in religious cliches. We say, everything happens for a reason, or God works in mysterious ways, and we move on, even if we don't believe it deep down. But those words often feel empty, especially to the person who just lost their child or is barely holding on. For some, these questions plant seeds of doubt. For others, they become full-blown anger, resentment, even hatred. And if we're not careful, that pain can drive us so far away from God that we don't want to come back. So, is there an answer? Honestly, not one that's going to make everything okay. Not one that's going to reverse your pain or bring back what you lost, because suffering isn't a riddle to be solved. It's a reality to be faced. Philosophers have written volumes on this. Entire careers have been spent trying to explain how a loving God and a suffering world can exist at the same time. And yes, the arguments are brilliant. Free will, soul-making, the greater good. But no matter how many theories you explore, when you're the one in pain, none of it really satisfies. C.S. Lewis wrote one of the most compelling defenses of God's goodness in the face of evil. But when his wife died, all those arguments crumbled under the weight of grief. He said it felt like the door to God had been slammed shut and bolted from the inside, and then silence. If you've ever been there, you know. There's nothing like crying out in the dark, begging for a response, and getting nothing but stillness. It can make you feel like you're completely alone, but you're not the first to ask these questions. There's a man in the Bible named Job. You've probably heard his story. A man of integrity. A man God himself called blameless. He had it all. A family he loved, a thriving business, respect, peace, and then it all fell apart. In the span of days, he lost everything. His wealth, his health, his children, gone. And what's worse, there was no explanation, no reason, just devastation. His body was covered in sores. His friends turned on him. His wife told him to curse God and die. And in the ashes of his life, Job asked the same question we all ask. Why? He begged for an audience with God. He demanded answers. He insisted on justice. And finally, God showed up, but not with explanations. God's response came through a storm.
Who is this? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Have you commanded the morning since the days began? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Do you have the wisdom to command the entire universe and the power to operate it? Who is this who questions without knowledge?
He never answered the question. He only answered with a series of unanswerable questions, as if to say, there are things you can't understand, but I do, and that's enough. And something shifted in Job. He didn't get clarity, he didn't get closure, but he got presence. He encountered a God who was far bigger than his pain, and who hadn't abandoned him, even in the darkest moment. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't need an answer as much as we need a relationship. Maybe God's response to suffering isn't an explanation, it's himself. Because that's what Jesus did. He didn't just watch from heaven while the world fell apart. He entered it. He walked into our pain. He lived among the sick, the rejected, the poor, the abused. He wept at the grave of a friend. He was betrayed, beaten, and killed, not because he had to, but because he chose to. And in doing that, he didn't just witness suffering, he conquered it. God doesn't promise a life free from pain. In fact, he guarantees the opposite. In this world you will have trouble, Jesus said. But take heart, I have overcome the world. He doesn't remove the suffering, he walks through it with us, and he redeems it. There's a quote I love from Corrie ten Boom, a woman who survived a Nazi concentration camp. There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. She lived hell on earth. She lost everything. But even in that place, she found the presence of God. That's not to say suffering makes sense. It doesn't. And it's not to say we should stop asking questions. God is big enough to handle your doubts, your fears, your rage. He invites your honesty. But when the questions fall silent and the tears still come, there's something more powerful than an answer. There's Jesus, sitting beside you in the dark, not with words, but with presence, with scars on his hands to prove that he knows what it feels like, with a whisper that says, I'm here, you're not alone, and we're going to get through this, together. That's not an explanation, it's an invitation. You see, maybe the better question isn't, why does God allow suffering? Maybe the question is, what will I do in the face of it? Will I let it make me bitter? Will I let it harden me? Will I use it as an excuse to walk away from faith? Or will I let it soften me? Will I let it wake me up to the pain of others? Will I sit with someone else in their darkness the way I wish someone would sit with me in mine? Evil isn't just something that happens to us. Sometimes, it's something that flows through us, in our selfishness, in our silence, in our apathy. Maybe the first step in overcoming the problem of evil is recognizing the part we play in it, and then choosing differently. Lighting a candle instead of cursing the dark, holding someone's hand instead of walking away, becoming a vessel of love, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. We don't get to control what happens to us, but we do get to decide how we respond. We get to choose whether we reflect God's love or contribute to the world's brokenness. And that choice, that response, it might just be the most powerful thing we have. God doesn't promise answers, but he promises himself. And that's enough. Because in the end, the cross doesn't answer the question of suffering with logic. It answers it with love. A love so deep, it chose nails. A love so fierce, it walked straight into death and came out the other side. And that love is still reaching for you, right now. So the question is, how will you respond? That's the real question. Not, why does God let bad things happen? Because no matter how deep the pain goes, no matter how unfair or cruel this world gets, the truth is, you still have a choice. You can let it drown you. You can let it twist you. You can let it close your heart until there's nothing left but anger, bitterness, and despair. Or, you can rise. You can refuse to let the darkness have the final word. You can fight back, not with hate, not with revenge, but with love, with patience, with courage. You can stand beside the brokenhearted. You can walk with the lonely. You can feed the hungry. You can speak up for the voiceless. You can forgive when it feels impossible. You can love when it hurts. And you won't be doing it alone. Because there is someone very real, very alive, who has already walked that road ahead of you. He's faced every evil. He's taken every blow. He's felt every tear you've ever cried. And he still stands. He's not shouting from the clouds. He's whispering in your soul. I'm here. I see you. I know. Let's do this, together. And in the end, that's the most powerful thing of all. Not that God gives us all the answers, but that he gives us himself. Not that he explains the pain, but that he enters it, bears it, transforms it, redeems it. Evil doesn't get the final word. Pain doesn't get the final say. Love does. So no, I may not have all the answers to the problem of evil, but I know this. When everything falls apart, when all the clever arguments fail, when the world breaks your heart in ways you didn't think possible, there is a cross, there is an empty tomb, there is a Savior who knows what it's like to bleed, and there is a love stronger than death, deeper than sorrow, and greater than every evil this world can throw at you. And that love is still calling you forward. So, what now? Will you respond with despair, or will you answer with love? Because in the end, it's not about solving the mystery of suffering. It's about refusing to let it win. It's about taking one more step, one more breath, one more act of love. It's about saying, even in the middle of the storm, even when the sky is dark and the ground is shaking, I trust you, and I'm not giving up. God never promised we wouldn't face evil. He promised we wouldn't face it alone. So let's go. Together.